A lot of people think that Euro nymphing and tight lining is a short game, but there's a lot of advantages to being able to fish and cast farther. Obviously, you can cover a lot more of the river if you can cast farther. There's going to be runs that that you wouldn't be able to wade to because, say, there's a deep channel and you want to fish to the far seam or the far bank. So being able to cast farther and reach that opens up a lot more targets. So another advantage to casting farther is just a better dead drift. If you can cast your fly farther upstream, get it down into the strike zone sooner, you can hold that dead drift a lot longer. And more time in the strike zone is more hookups. So there's that. So finally, another great reason to cast farther is just to not spook fish. In this area of the river, I want to fish about 2/3 out there where those boulders are, but in between those boulders and where I'm at now, there's a lot of calm water, and it's going to spook a lot of fish trying to get over there. So I'm better off staying back here and making a 40-foot cast to get into those targets over there, because there's a good chance if I sneak up on there, I'm just going to scare them. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to try to fish that area, but from way back here. There we go. All right, so there's a nice rainbow. The water's pretty calm between me and my target, so I probably wouldn't have been able to sneak up on him because it also gets really shallow. So to get close to those to my target, I would have been standing very much a lot higher than him, so the fish probably would have seen me. So in the last video, I showed you some of the advantages of being able to cast farther with a Euro nymph or a tightline rig, and you're probably wondering, so how do you cast farther? And there's a lot of techniques, but one of the easiest ways is just with adding weight to your rig. So let's go over that now. There's a few ways I want to talk about. One is, the easiest way is just to add split shot. Split shot's a really easy way to add weight, or tungsten putty. It'll get your flies down and it'll help you cast. But in this area right here where I caught that fish, the water's really shallow and it's moving really slow. So split shot would not be a good option because it's just going to take my fly down to the bottom and hang up. So so in this case, what I did was I used a mop fly. See if you can see it. And what a mop fly does is it soaks up water, so it's got a lot of weight to it. A lot of weight to load your rod and shoot that thing out pretty far. And when it lands on the water, it doesn't just sink because the weight is from water, so it's a little bit more neutral on the water instead of just sinking. Okay, so that's a split shot and a heavy mop fly. But let's say that I want to fish really tiny flies. There's no way that fly is gonna load my rod very well for a long cast because there's just no weight to it. So what I did on this rig was I added an indicator or a bobber, and that's going to do a couple things. It's going to help me float that fly through this soft kind of slow water, but it's also going to give me the weight to load my rod and cast farther. So let's give this one a try. So as you can see, the bobber rig worked pretty well. I was able to catch this fish just by adding the bobber and changing my flies from the heavy mop fly to really small, almost unweighted nymph flies. But there was some disadvantages. The bobber has a pretty loud plop and splash, so that's not always good, but I guess for here it didn't really matter. I am able to drift a bobber a little further downstream, which could be good. So there's advantages and disadvantages of both rigs, but both of them added weight and allowed me to cast further out. So yeah, I mean, they both work pretty well. So in our last video, we talked about adding weight to your rig to help load the rod and cast farther. But what I want to talk about now are some other techniques and other ways to help load the rod without adding weight. So the first and most important thing is to remove all the slack. If you have a bunch of slack in your rig, in your line, you just can't load this rod. You need to really feel the weight of your rig. So if I've got a lot of line up there, I can't load this rod very well. So what I want to do is strip in my line, and so I can feel my flies, the weight of my flies, and now I can cast them forward and back. It's a timing thing. Wait until the flies are, you can feel the weight of the flies before you start your forward cast. If I'm aerializing my cast, I want to wait till I feel it in my back cast before I start my forward cast. If I start my cast too soon, I'm going to have too much slack in my line and it's not going to go very far. So take out the slack. Practice taking slack out of your line as you're casting. So the next thing you can do to help load your rod is you can use the water to help load the rod. You can water load it. So as your fly drops down, you can take the slack out of your line and you can cast forward or back. And the water grabbing the flies gives resistance and helps load the rod. So as you can see, the line is fairly straight and the water is grabbing my fly down there. So when I cast, I've got more resistance and more bend in my rod. Again, you still have to take out the slack. So I threw my fly downstream. I removed all the slack. I kind of lift the fly higher in the water column. And now I'm all loaded up and ready to cast. That's water loading. The last technique to loading your rod is to haul. I'm hauling with my line hand. And as you can see, most of my casting is done with my line hand. The rod hand's not doing a whole lot. That puts a lot more power into the cast. And then of course you can do all three. You can take the slack out, you can water load, and you can haul. And that's going to give you the most power. So those are three easy ways to help load your rod and cast farther without having to add weight to your rig. So practice those and give it a try. those are just some examples of how casting farther when you're Euro nymphing and tight lining can really help you.